Mythbusting then with Andy Denney today, and we are looking at Tai Chi and some of the functional applications. And this is a topic that I'm really interested in, so I'm looking forward to this chat, to be fair, to see some of the self-defense, the function, and more than just the health benefits of Tai Chi. So Andy Denney is definitely the man to talk to. Thank you so much for coming on, Andy.
It's very, very kind of you to have me, Dan. Thank you very much, mate. So I'll explain by saying a bit about myself so you understand why that's important to me, a bit about my background. I started my martial arts journey when I was about 4 or 5 years old with judo, and loved it. And it's been something that stayed with me my whole life, and I'm still practicing judoka now.
Awesome.
I was educated as an archaeologist, and I then joined the Royal Marines, and I knocked about in the military for a bit, left, went onto the circuit as a security contractor out in Iraq, did that for a couple of years, got married, came home, and then took up my martial arts journey all over again. And I think one of the things that I find interesting about Chinese martial arts, I think it comes from being a soldier and from being educated as an archaeologist.
Yeah.
It's a bit like archaeology. Unless you're really, really lucky with your Shifu, your instructor, the chances are you're going to be pulling apart the talu, which is the Chinese for kata, is a more familiar word for most people in the UK, but pulling apart the forms, the kata, the talu, and looking for the applications inside them. A quick look on Google and you'll see the same technique and about 40 different applications. And probably 3/4 of them will be completely ridiculous and unworkable, sort of betraying the fact that the people that have come up with that application have never ever sparred. And, and I think it's really fair to say that. I don't mean to upset anyone, because myth busting, you're busting people's values and you're busting their belief system. But my view, having been a soldier, having been a judoka, and having been informed by Randuri from a really small young age, I would say that you shouldn't ever suspend your logic. You should never ever suppress that inquisitive part of your mind that says why do we do it like this and not like this. And I think there is a sense, particularly in some traditional martial arts, people have this erroneous sense of, well, my Shifu said it, so therefore it must be right. Or my sensei told me to do it like this, therefore everyone else is wrong, without actually questioning why. Yeah. And I think that's where it starts to go wrong for a lot of styles and a lot of branches within styles. And Tai Chi is probably the worst example of that. Most people have learned Tai Chi as a health art, and the reason why they've learned it as a health art is because it has evolved into that through successive generations from its founder, young Liu Chen. Yeah. But originally it wasn't. He was a fighter.
I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there, especially with some traditional martial arts and just going, okay, well, the sensei, the Shifu, the instructor has said to do it this way, therefore I will do it this way. But the act of questioning things anymore, and the act of investigating yourself or testing it yourself in some, and I'm not going to label every single martial art the same or every single traditional martial art the same, but in some, and I'd argue quite a lot of traditional martial arts, that aspect of testing or pressure testing has disappeared now, and you just run through the syllabus and that's it.
I think there has to be a balance between I'm trying not to use too much jargon, because most people will be familiar with Japanese jargon rather than Chinese jargon. So there's a balance, has to be a balance between forms and free sparring. Obviously, the forms are designed to teach you the techniques. They're not designed to be a pretty display piece.
Yes.
No, not originally. Obviously, modern wushu has come along, and we can talk about why that happened in a bit. But the whole idea of learning forms is to give you good body mechanics. It's to strengthen you, to give you flexibility, to hone your stretch reflex and how to turn your hips into the kicks and the movements. the stances there to strengthen your body and also to give the whole thing shape.
Yeah.
You never see somebody in the cage, going into a horse dance, do you?
I'd like to. That'd be cool.
Why would they do that? That would be bonkers, right? And I think, with Tai Chi, it's worse because of the softness. Now, the idea behind the softness and the slowing down, it's a bit like marksmanship principles as a Marine. As a Royal Marine, I was trained that the weapon must point naturally at the target with no undue physical effort. Well, that might as well be lifted out of the Tai Chi Classics.
Yeah.
Because the idea is that if you are having to force it, then you're not in a structurally sound position to deliver the dynamics of the technique. Now, all of us know that when you're sparring, it goes apart and it looks like nothing like the Carter.
Sure.
The problem that the Tai Chi community has is that when you get people from a sparring lineage, so there's a really excellent sparring lineage. I'm not a member of it, but the friends of mine in the UK who do lots of sparring, they do lots of sundar, and those guys do lots of fighting, and they always get criticised. Oh, it looks nothing like the form. Or the guys that are doing the push hands competitive competitions, that looks nothing like push hands.
Yeah.
That's because they are, in their mind, thinking it has to look exactly like the practice drills, that you see people doing. But of course, real combat doesn't look like that. Watch Mongolian wrestling, watch traditional Chinese Shui Jiao, look at the arts that Tai Chi probably evolved from.
Yeah.
They look nothing like that. And if you look at Muay Thai, they're dancing, don't they? As part of their original kata. Nobody's accusing them of being ineffective. I mean, I think we have to get back to the source of what Tai Chi is about. Now, the movements are practice soft because what you're seeking out in your practice is that inherent structure, that marksmanship principle that I was talking about there. That it has to be naturally aligned. So you are optimizing your skeleton. And when you can optimize your skeleton and your structure, then you are in a place where you add a little bit of muscle and it's much more effective. And I think, I don't know whether that's me coming into Tai Chi as a judo player. And it may be that I'm just bringing with me Jigoro Kano's principle of Serioku Zenyo and maximum efficient use of power, maybe. But it is my belief that is what Tai Chi is about, and that's certainly how my non-judoka Shifu trained Tai Chi. And the interesting thing is, lots of people wax lyrical and say, "Oh, Tai Chi applications are about principles and not about actual techniques," which is how they justify their invented crap applications.
Yeah.
I just don't believe that's true at all. I think it's really obvious that what most of the applications are, particularly if you've done another combative Chinese martial art, or indeed if you've done any sparring at all.
Yeah,
it's really obvious. They're really obvious.
Yeah, you obviously come at this from a unique perspective of being a judoka and training, and as you said, doing the randori from kind of a young age, and then going into combat, into real life combat that not that many people can claim to have as well as a Royal Marine, and then now looking at the Tai Chi as well, which is obviously a soft, delicate martial art.
It is a soft martial art, and it needs to be formed delicately, but essentially what you should be feeling when you're practicing Tai Chi is a real heaviness. So turning on the weighted foot, your structure is always behind. Every time your punch goes in or your kick comes in, you're sinking your weight into that. You are delivering your mass literally into the shots. Okay, you're doing it in slow motion, but you're doing it in slow motion so that you can measure it and you can feel it and you can make it happen smoothly. And I think this is where Tai Chi really suffers, but it's not the only martial art that suffers, is that people who've done another martial art will look at it and go, what the bloody hell's all that about? Yeah?
Yeah.
And I was one of them, believe it or not.
Okay.
Didn't go to learn Tai Chi from my Shifu. I went to learn Shaolin Mi Zongchuan, which is dynamic, loads of punches, loads of kicks. There's a similar techniques you recognise from karate or taekwondo or Muay Thai, or kickboxing. Loads of dynamic punches, kicks, trips, sweeps. Loads of nasty joint locks and stuff all in there. It's a proper mixed martial art, but just one that was mixed up in antiquity. And I think I kind of thought, well, Tai Chi, it's all right. But he said, no, you should do that. It'll be good for your other martial arts practice. I thought, well, it'd be good for me, And I think it's actually been better for me than more of the same. I think it has, because it's forced me to stop and think about, where is my weight when I kick actually?
Mm-hmm.
Should I be dropping my weight? Should I be just bending that knee to get a bit more range?
Yeah.
And it's enabled me to take my martial arts to another level. And I think as I've got older, I'm 45 next month, but as I'm getting older, I'm feeling that when I injure myself, it takes me longer to bounce back from it.
Sure.
It really does. I trying to do everything right, eat healthily, and keep my exercise up, my fitness levels up. But really and truly, you should expect, as you get older, for your body to degrade.
Yeah.
I think because I come from a martial arts background into Tai Chi, and because we drill the applications a bit like Judo Ichikomi, in fact, a lot like Judo Ichikomi, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
That's something I think I do quite differently.
Yeah.
We take an application for Tai Chi and we'll drill it. With partner drills. It's a bit difficult at the moment during lockdown, but
sure. Sure.
We drill it and we drill it until it becomes obvious. And it's amazing how that pays back into the taolu, into the kata. And you see people performing it gracefully, yes, continuously, yes. But it makes it obvious that they know what they're doing.
Sure.
In the same way that I've got great karate friends who say, well, it's completely obvious that person is performing that kata with no idea what the bunkai is.
Yeah.
It's the same sort of thing. The problem is that we are the exception, not the norm.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Why has it become an exception now? Because Tai Chi originally was seen as a martial art, but then over the generations or over the years, etc., and the lineage.
Right from the beginning, it started to go wrong.
Yeah, right. Right from the get-go.
A history journey now. Okay, right from the beginning, as soon as it became called Tai Chi, that is, and it became called Tai Chi in the late Qing dynasty. So there are various different creation myths, and all the Chinese martial arts pretty much have these fake myths about how their style created.
Yeah.
And it's normally to link them to a famous popular personality, or to a popular place like Shaolin Shi or Dangshan, and Tai Chi is no exception. In fact, Tai Chi has this sort of very, very outlandish claims about coming from Taoism and Udang Mountain and things like that. Well, it's actually provably not true. But without getting lost down there, Tai Chi looks as though it is derived, at least to a great extent, from a military training form created by the Ming Dynasty general Qi Jiguang, and it's all there in black and white in his training manual from 1560. Okay, right. So it's pretty obvious where it comes from. All of the moves, most of them have even got the same names that they've got now.
Yeah,
techniques. Okay, so it's really obvious that's where it came from. And then we have the patriarch of Chen village, the first one, Chen Wang Ting. He served for a while in the late Qing military, and then came back to Chen village. There's some controversy about whether or not he was the famous general of the same name. I think it's probably not true. I think there was a famous general at the same time who was decorated. I don't think he was a general. I think the records that show otherwise. But either way, he definitely served in the Qing military. And he came back, and I think he had knowledge of that form and passed it down. And other people knew it because they served right in the military at those times. Just like if we all form up on Remembrance Day, we all still know the drill.
Yeah.
And so he knew that, he was trained in that, and that was passed down in that local area and continued to be passed down, for a few hundred years. And then enter young Liu Chan, who was the man who made it famous. Well, he went to Chen village on a couple of occasions to stay there, study there, and learn there. And he gradually perfected the art that they taught in Chen village, which they didn't call Tai Chi Chuan, by the way. They called Chen Family Fist.
Right.
Yeah. So he learned that from his teacher, and he then went back to Beijing. No, he actually he's from Yongnan, which is also in the north of China. He then was invited by some contacts who are well connected to go and teach his art in the Forbidden City.
Yeah.
And while he was there, he earned the name Yang the Undefeated. It's normally completely mistranslated as Yang the Invincible, but the Chinese actually means Yang the Undefeated. And that must have been quite a task, because at the Forbidden City at that time, there were hundreds of martial arts instructors. It wasn't like it was a great honor, because you imagine a country the size of China, but there were literally hundreds of instructors there, teaching a mixture of Mongolian bokke, traditional Mongolian wrestling, Manchurian buku, the related Manchu styles of wrestling, Chinese shuijiao, which is jacket wrestling sport similar to judo, and also there were archers and equestrian instructors all there, teaching the gentry and the scholars how to defend themselves, and also to keep the Manchurian-ness alive of that foreign dynasty.
Sure.
So that was all ongoing, and he was thrust into that and was able to hold his own. So he can't have been chi blasting people, right? He was fighting, yeah. Maybe. For sure. We can do another podcast on chi, right?
Okay.
That'd take me too long.
The whole world, yeah.
That is also one of the reasons why it's gone a bit south, but I'll tell you, we'll briefly touch on that. So he could fight, but the demand for his skill became very, very big. At the time, he called his style either Hua Chuan, which means neutralizing fist, or Mian Chuan. The character Mian means cotton, but it also means continuous. The idea, like cotton, Mian, it sort of moves in and out, and you can, when you're pulling it off the thing and you're weaving, you're pulling cotton and you're making it into a thread, it comes on. So it was called sort of cotton thread or cotton fist or continuous fist originally. But what happened is that while he was doing his stuff and fighting and demonstrating, one of the scholars in the Forbidden City at the time, a chap called Wang, decided to write a little poem about how awesome he was as a fighter.
Right.
And he said, hands holding Taiji, which is a Neo-Confucian symbol, shake heaven and earth. Yeah. And it was such a success. Everyone was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Because the imagery harked back to the Song dynasty and to the Ming dynasty, and to a time when China was Chinese and before it was conquered by the Qing. So and also him being Han and not Manchu, it got a lot of support from the people. And the name stuck. It became Tai Chi Chuan. Yeah. And it was retrospectively applied to the art he learned in Chen village. Okay. So when people say Chen Tai Chi, technically it's not Tai Chi. Sure. It's the ancestor of Tai Chi. Yeah. And the proof of that is that when the first Chen guy came to teach I think he might have been the second. I think he took over from his nephew. But the first Chen guy went to teach famous Tengi Chen guy went to teach in Beijing. They asked him to teach Tai Chi, and he went, "What's Tai Chi? I can teach 10 family fist." You know, so there's lots of myths. But what seemed to happen is that, well, we know what happened next. Young Cheng Fu had 3 sons. And whilst he was a good fighter, his first son apparently had great ability, but died tragically young.
Okay.
His second son, young Bahal, was a bully, and he used to knock his students about.
Right.
And we all know senseis like it. It's just,
yeah.
He was one of those guys, right?
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of the aristocrats and the scholars that he was teaching, that we know it's true because they wrote letters to young Liu Chan complaining about the way he was treating them, right?
Okay.
So he didn't inherit, and instead the lineage passed to his third son, young Zhenhao, who was a lovely bloke. Everyone loved him. Okay, he wasn't the natural fighter by all accounts that his brother was, and he, some even say he had a nervous breakdown trying to fill his dad's shoes.
Wow. Okay.
So that tells you a bit about it. Young Liu Chan himself had several students, and they founded their own lineages. And so the Wu style, the Hao style, and Sun style, they all sort of flow out of Yang style, which itself is a continuation of Chen style, which itself is a continuation of the training manual created by General Qi Jiguan, not Wudang Jiashan or any of that Zhang Shanfan or all that nonsense. Okay, so we have this style that's now been created and has been passed down. It's been passed down to the son, who is the least martial of the 3 brothers. Yeah. Just through circumstance. One's fault. And then the same thing happens in the next generation. He has 3 sons. The oldest one, Xiaohu, is bully. Okay. They say he had an identical temperament to his uncle, and they just sent him to learn from his uncle, right?
Right.
That's what the guy. You know, again, proper hard-nosed martial artist. Yeah. But probably had a rather more, I suppose, how do you say, a less gentle character. Yeah. The middle son, unfortunately, died again. Okay. It was common, wasn't it, years ago for children to die young. And then the third son inherited, and that was young Cheng Fu. Now, all pretty much of the modern Yang style forms that are extant today that people practice are from young Cheng Fu. Okay. And he was a huge guy, huge personality, massive, physically massive guy as well. Yeah. But very gentle in spirit. And the time that he was passing it on was in the Republican period. So the Qing dynasty had fallen, and he had taken over the mantle during the Republican period, at a time when martial arts were being used as a kind of calisthenics to kind of strengthen the sick and emaciated people. Yeah. That were basically being bullied by us, by the Japs, by everyone. Okay, so it was a bit of a difficult time for them, and they were trying to gather some national pride. And Tai Chi, because it strengthens the body without damaging it. This is really important. It strengthens the body without damaging it. Because it does that, it was then, I suppose, disseminated more widely than just a martial art. Okay, yeah. And it's partly because of that political time. It's partly because of his character. And it's also because, for reasons known only to himself, between the published 2 books, and some point in the 30s, it looks like he, between the publication of the 2 books, he decided that he was going to dumb down the martial arts application instruction to non-family members. Okay, yeah. So he would only teach inside the family rather than outside the family. So that meant that a lot of his students didn't receive the same instruction as his real close-knit inner disciples.
Sure.
And there are a number of lineages around that come back from those days, and including mine. But we look at how it happened, and we can see, okay, well, this is the point really where things started to change radically. So there's a gradual dumbing down of the martial content because people were teaching it less aggressively.
Yeah, they were nicer people.
Yeah, that's right. And also people weren't growing up wrestling. Their clientele were no longer Manchu princes and sons of lords that have been groomed for combat in the Qing army, in the banner armies. They had, just Joe Public.
Yeah, it was more peaceful times, and
it was there to strengthen them. So one of the most famous students was a chap called Professor Chen Manqing, who introduced it to Taiwan and America. And he starts his Tai Chi journey with tuberculosis,
right?
And feels that he writes that the regular practice of it helped cure him of his illness.
Yeah.
So that was really his focus, was on the health when he then went on to teach his people.
Yeah, of course.
But before that, that was already happening. And without being rude about certain lineages, they are the ones that got right into their philosophical Taoism afterwards.
Yeah.
They are the lineages that stopped teaching plausible martial applications.
Okay, yeah, and turned it into a health and holistic.
They may have received them as part of a demonstration narrative.
Yep.
But they didn't drill them.
Okay.
So they misunderstood. And Chinese whispers are literal Chinese whispers.
Literal, yeah.
Western whispers and all sorts of other whispers. I've mutated it into all sorts of things, and that's before we even got to the bloody language barrier.
Yeah.
And so what we have is Tai Chi mutating into something which isn't very martial at all.
No.
That's not to say that all the lineages have this problem. But flowing from that, this was almost like a ready-made package for the West. So if you think in the last century, science killed God. And there's what sort of Christian evangelists call a God-shaped hole in people's heart. I think that's very much the case. There was a sort of God-shaped hole in society's heart. You can't just rip it out and expect science to be able to fill that immediately.
Yeah,
right?
completely. Yeah.
So hence the growth of the New Age, the huge growth of Islam, and other religions with answers, right? And it was the same. It's the same with I think Tai Chi. It sort of arrived at the right time. But people are like, oh, but there is a spirituality, and and we don't need to call it God. We can call it Tao. It's very convenient. It makes you sound less stupid than if you have got a beard. I'm not down on beards though, man. I'm just saying. But that's the I think the fundamental attraction is that it then became this kind of health, spiritual panacea that used to be a martial art.
Yes,
I think that's where we've got.
Yeah,
it's taught by people who would otherwise have been teaching yoga, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm not sort of slagging that off particularly, but it doesn't help its image as a martial art.
No, I would argue that people don't see it as a martial art anymore. People see it as a health, as you said, similar to yoga, similar to Pilates, things like that. It's a form of exercise to keep the body healthy, and
because it was reinvented as a calisthenics.
And the image that's attracted is of the older generation practicing it in a park. As soon as you say Tai Chi, that's what.
And a huge number of people that come to me to learn are older generation, but increasingly I'm finding that I'm finding my tribe. We all attract, don't we? And the birds of a feather that are flocking to me are broken karateka.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Broken kickboxers, broken people who used to do Kempo years ago, or now they're sort of, or they boxed in their youth, and now they're like, oh, I just kind of like this. It's physical and it feels martial. It's just And then the fact that I'm able to say, yeah, it is actually. And if you look at it like this, and I break down the technique, and I found myself doing that more and more and more and more and more. And I think, well, do you know what? There is a market for that. I mean, I don't know another martial artist that hasn't had an injury. It's just like,
martial arts is good for you. What are you talking about? It's good for the body, good for this health. No.
Somebody tells you they're a bare knuckle boxer, but you look at their hands and their hands are absolutely perfect. They're porcupines. All martial artists get injured, right? And so it is with with the sort of people I attract. People, I've just taken on a student who has been doing very traditional but high impact, aggressive kicking style, and he's got hip problems, he's got lower back problems, and he realizes he can't do it forever, but he doesn't want to give up martial arts. And I think Tai Chi can really, it is absolutely custom made for guys like him. Yeah. And so I think what I'm trying to do is gradually just spread the word that Tai Chi can be reinvigorated. As long as we know what the applications are, they can be drilled. If they can be drilled, they can be worked into sparring. If they can be worked into sparring, then it's practical.
Yeah, it's functional and practical. Then it's tested and tried.
Correct. And of course, I mean, some people go, well, it doesn't look like Tai Chi anymore. No, it does look like Tai Chi. It's like Tai Chi what it used to look like. Before he's got hold of it. Okay, and that's my take on it. I want to return Tai Chi the way it's taught in our school to the source, and ultimately I want to attract some younger people, and I want to get them actually sparring and mixing it up with different styles. Awesome. Why not? I do. It's
such an important thing, I think, especially for traditional martial arts. And I don't know where I see the traditional martial arts going in the next 15, 20 years. Because if you look 15, 20 years back, there's always been kind of in the 70s, it was Kung Fu with the Bruce Lee era. In the 80s, it was Karate Kid. So karate got a resurgence, I suppose. And then you look to the 90s and forward to now, it's been MMA and it's been Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I would argue mainly.
Yeah.
And I see this carrying on for quite a while because MMA
it's true, but I think the cross-pollination is what's needed.
Yeah.
You know what? I almost think of it as being a little bit kind of like a kind of racism. And people, it's beyond my dad's bigger than your dad between the styles. The sooner that people start mixing it up, the sooner they'll start working out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a bad idea. Part of me, the traditional judo guy, thinks like Jigoro Kano said that awesome. Go and practice your judo with other styles.
Yeah.
But as soon as it becomes commercial, there's promoters, yada yada. It's these exact words. You shouldn't do it. It goes against the nature of judo and the true purpose of judo, because the true purpose of judo is in education.
Yeah.
But if the purpose of MMA becomes education, if the purpose of MMA is not trash talking, spitting obscenities at each other, basically being a dick, that's a bad example for other humans, particularly younger humans, then traditional martial arts will continue to eschew it.
Yes.
But as soon as MMA does what Connor's done, and as sort of the boy's become a man and reconciled himself with being a father and a husband and actually quite a nice bloke on the inside, and that started to shine through, we like him more than when he was winning.
Yeah, well, it's having an ambassador for the sport, isn't it? It's being ambassadors for the sport at that point.
We've always liked certain things about it. He's always been great with his fans. He's always been come across as a nice, loyal kind of guy.
Yeah, entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. But now we like him more. Yeah, and I think it's not just about being likable. It's because we can see that we as traditional martial artists, you're brought up with values as well as with techniques. Because there's, in the same way that we're taught the morality of war as soldiers, we are. Padre sits you down, gives you death by PowerPoint on stuff like that. You're like, oh.
Slide number 64.
And my old Padre isn't watching. But it's that's the nature of violence, and it's right, isn't it? It's like you've got safety laws in MMA. You don't punch people in the back of the head.
Yeah.
And traditional martial arts, but I couldn't be able to use my technique, so it wouldn't be fair. Oh, come on.
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't see Muay Thais doing the flying elbow down onto the top of the head, but they manage to do it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, nobody's allowed to kick each other in the balls. You know, how do you practice that? Do you even need to practice that to know it works? You know, same with an eye gouge.
Yeah.
You know, same with clapping people on the ears.
Yeah.
Same with stamping on the knee. Same with strikes to the joints. You know, we don't need. We know enough about human biology. I mean, that's something else. That when I left, and I was studying to do this, I took loads of physiological qualifications. So I was a personal trainer up to level 4, so I can take people with referred populations. Didn't know I was going to be a Tai Chi coach, but it's bloody handy. With rheumatoid arthritis and MS and all sorts.
Sure.
So I think Tai Chi needs to sort of go back. It needs a bit of a reality check. I think it needs people like Xu Xiaodong wandering around, walking up to these people with their fake lineages and their sort of cults that follow them, and challenging them. I think it's been absolutely awesome. People say, "Oh, it's terrible. He's giving Tai Chi." No, Tai Chi's giving itself a bad name. You know, by pretending to be a martial art when they're not teaching anything practical, when they don't even know the received applications, they don't even know the Yongfa. You know, how can they say it's a martial art? And I think for me, that's it. People are selling it as a health exercise, and they're not teaching that. I've got some respect for that. They're doing a good thing, like helping people out.
Yeah. Well, it's being open, it's being honest. If they're not teaching it as a martial art, cool. All good. If you're saying this has got health benefits, that's my lane. Crack on. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel even if I even go so far as if it's to say is that okay, you might not be willing to pressure test it. You know, you might. I mean, you might be 58 with buggered knees, and you don't want to step into a cage. Do you? I mean, come on. I mean, you're expecting that guy to do that. Yeah. Really. But what you'd expect to see are at least some applications that are plausible, workable, with people drilling them, you know, with starting with no resistance whatsoever. Yeah. And then gradually working up.
Incremental.
So you don't even need to throw them. Just the old, just breaking the balance. It's just enough, isn't it, to know that it would work. Yeah. I mean, but you don't see that. What do you see? You see somebody touches student, and his student do a cartwheel across.
That's a whole thing in itself, isn't it? This.
You know what? If there's anybody watching who thinks, "Oh, Tai Chi, I'll watch that," and this comes across as a disappointment to you, I'm telling you, as a former combat soldier and a lifelong judo player that frequently gets his ass handed to him still in Randuri, because I'm still only 12 stone piss wet through. Honestly, that doesn't work. Yeah. It's never worked. It's not like it used to work once upon a time. It's never worked. It's not real.
No.
There is sensitivity. But same as there's sensitivity in judo.
So where do you think this has come from then? So there's the really famous video that went around a few years back of the Tai Chi master, like quite an old guy, what you would imagine as a Tai Chi master with kind of a wispy beard. And then against an MMA guy, they set the rules out. There's a referee there, and within 10, 15 seconds, boff, straight to the face. The guy's down. The Tai Chi master.
Yeah, I know exactly who you mean. I know exactly who you.
And it's done. But the preamble to this,
Chinese Tai Chi guy.
Yeah, the preamble to this was him throwing his students around, waving his hands, doing his thing, and his students, and he had a lot of them in the video. There was what, 20, 30.
What it goes back to, quite simply, is back in the old days, they used to do these sorts of hard Qi Gong tricks. You sometimes see them in the old Shaw Brothers movies where someone snaps a spear on their throat, or they do something which shows their superior body conditioning.
Yeah, it's the old Shaolin monk wheel of life.
Right. Well, it goes back to students sort of over-egging responses to plausible techniques. So, for example, someone pushes towards you and you've maintained structure there, or you don't have to do anything. You just got to collapse your arm. You've elbowed them in the face, and they fall into it. Right? It's funny, Gracie called it flowing with the go. Okay, so you sense where your opponent is, you feel what they're doing, and then you take their energy, and you're very practiced at listening for it and redirecting it.
Yeah,
and that's what the push hand games is all about, really.
Yeah.
And what happens is that masters wanted to try and attract students in the old days. Their students would receive the signal from them, and then they launch themselves back, and everyone would go, oh, in the audience, and then they, all throw their coins in, or whatever. It's a way of attracting students and a way of creating revenue when times are hard.
Yeah.
And different styles have their own forms that they might perform for that reason, to showcase a little bit about what they do. And it's entertainment. Unfortunately, the appetite for Taoism and the spirituality has gone off the scale. And so people who want to believe that Tai Chi can be a religion for them, they've kind of taken the ball and run with it. And there comes a point where certain individuals set themselves up as kind of cults.
Yeah, and I'd argue it's not just Tai Chi. I'd argue
no. Tai Chi particularly bad. You see it in some schools.
Yeah. There's certain martial arts that do have it. I'd argue Tai Chi is one. I'd argue Aikido is one. I'd argue some forms of jiu-jitsu, like the traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. Some of those you see it as well. I think it's rife in some martial arts that aren't particularly emphasized on competition or testing it.
I honestly think that the personality we have to thank for our modern approach to martial arts, as it were, is Jigoro Kano.
Yes. Yeah.
I just genuinely think that he understood, and he set out as an educator to make this work.
Yeah.
Unusually, Jigoro Kano was a scholar as well as a fighter, and this is one of the problems I think that we have. Is Tai Chi attracts very highbrow people, thinkers.
Yeah,
and they want it to be a panacea. They really want it, and because they want it to be a panacea so badly, it ends up having this effect. And then what happens is, after years of practice, I'm sure most of these people come to a realization that
this is it.
It isn't, right? Yeah. But what do? They've got a following. They've invested 30 years of their life into something which is not provably true.
Yeah, well, this is the paradox, isn't it? Because they're logical thinkers, but then what they're doing is illogical.
Correct. They surrender their reason.
Yeah.
As a martial artist, that is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah. They've gone in too deep at that point. They are, as you said, the master, they've got a following. There's no turning back at that point because they'll get their ass handed to them.
They're kind of sneaky.
And then the veil slips.
I know. Yeah. And it's such a shame. Do you know what? If one of my students goes to me, do you know what, Shifu, that's absolute pony. How's that going to work? I'm going to want to hear that all day long.
Yeah.
Because that's how we polish the diamond of truth. The criticism.
Yeah.
That's what Randuri is about. It's about refining it, about making it better, by making yourself better, by making the art better. Not going there. Well, my Shifu said that he could do dim mak.
Yeah.
Why have you surrendered your reason? Why are you taking that? Why are you accepting that? And why do you accept me to respect your appeal to authority there? I just cannot.
And this is where it does go into the level of not a martial art anymore, or not a health benefit. It goes into the level of cult.
That's right. That's
Where
right.
it's just like, okay, you just surrender your reasoning.
And it's purely about money and power, and you look at how these people behave. You know, I heard people say, well, I had this teacher once, and you know, you could feel the aura when he walked into the room. That's a projection.
You feel his links.
That's a person's mind there that has been conditioned to think of him in that way.
Yeah,
that's all that is.
Yeah, it's like some of it like classic NLP kind of stuff, and just programming that way and slipping certain words in, and you know, it's almost a form of hypnotism.
I'm part Romany, and I reckon, being part Romany, if I was at a party and everyone had a bit to drink, I could freak some people out and talk a load of spiritual ooby doobies, get everyone thinking, oh, he's so spiritual and out there. I could do it. It'd just be an act. Be an act. But anyone can do it.
Yeah,
anyone can do it. Just like anyone can manipulate students into forming a certain cue. And there's certain cues, and there's certain little tricks that Tai Chi has. So one of them is this one where you see them all pushing against the hand. I'm sure you've seen that. All you're doing is creating a structure.
Yeah.
Through your body down to the heel.
Yeah, I've seen it in another martial arts as well. Yeah, it's not magic. It's
someone can teach you how to do that. That is a physiological creation of structure that anyone can learn. Yeah, it's no magic, but then of course it's just ridiculous. Then you have them all in a line pushing it.
Yeah,
of course, the person
seen that again in different martial arts. Yeah,
balance the first one, which is easy because he's like that, leaning forward, and then all of them go up. You know, it's just so ridiculous.
It is.
It's just so ridiculous, and yeah, it's a bit upsetting.
Yeah,
but Tai Chi's full of it, and martial arts are full of fibs.
Yeah, traditional martial arts, I say, were full of it.
Big fibs, and it includes quite skilled people.
Yeah.
I'm not here to slag off other styles. I'm just going to stick with my own. But you know, there are plenty of styles that have got dubious lineages, dubious creation. Not just Chinese ones, Japanese ones. You know, including some really popular ones. You know, riding on the success of certain cartoons. Yeah, that are they've got a slightly dodgy lineage there. But actually, when you break it down, there's some really good stuff being taught.
Yeah.
You just think, well, okay, that's all right.
Yeah.
And I think with Tai Chi, that's how we should view the Tai Chi Classics. So there's if you know about the Tai Chi Classics, but there's a series of poems, stories, and bits of prose, rules for practice that were written down in the late 19th century.
Okay.
And they sort of reinforce, with one notable exception, the creation myth back to Udang and Zhang Sanfeng, who's this Taoist saint on the mountain, and all the rest of it. It's I was going to say not probably untrue. I was almost definitely untrue.
Okay.
Particularly as we know, I told you earlier that the name Tai Chi was created by a scholar in the late Victorian period, right? So we know it's not true. We also know that the Tai Chi symbol was created not by Taoists. It was created by Confucians, Neo-Confucians in the Song Dynasty. But everyone thinks it's Taoism. And you try telling people on a Tai Chi forum that it's Confucian. Oh, blimey, heck. You know, because they've invested it. This is their whole worldview.
That's it. Yeah.
It's extremely damaging.
Yeah, it's the worldview. It's their identity.
Yourself, and you believe that your martial art contains truth. You kind of got to step back and realise that martial arts are the product of people.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that's it, really. That's it. And Tai Chi Classics, they come up with. There's loads of really good stuff in there for practice.
Yeah.
If you're a BJJ guy will go, oh yeah, I like that. That makes sense. I can see that's exactly like what happens when you're rolling. You know, same with a judoka.
Yeah.
But it has to be spooky fingers for a lot of people, unfortunately.
Does. Where would you like to see the future of Tai Chi going then, with obviously what you're doing, what people similar in who have a similar background and feel and way of practicing Tai Chi?
I think martial arts naturally fragment, change,
Yeah.
blend over time, and I see some branches of Tai Chi, if I'm completely honest with you, becoming more and more dishonest, becoming more and more about taking people's money for a load of lies.
Yeah.
I see more and more of them becoming more and more divorced from their practical, classical past.
Yep.
Moving into a theoretical, nonsense classical past that never existed in the first place. So I also see other lineages. I see some of the UK all-star people really taking their Sandar onto the next, taking Tai Chi to the next level in Sandar, and maybe even moving forward from Sandar up into MMA.
Okay, that would be interesting. Yeah.
I see for my part, me continuing to help the people that I care about, that is injured older martial artists.
Yeah.
I'm getting to an age now at 45 where I think an MMA appearance is out of the question, but damn right, I want to be training people for that kind of environment.
Cool. Yeah.
And I see that through drawing out the applications, drilling them, sparring.
Yeah. Perfect.
I don't see that there's I don't see that that's untraditional either. No. I see performance Tai Chi Chuan as untraditional. I see the Wushu competitions as untraditional.
Yeah.
They have their ancestors in their family temples are turning in their graves. They were warriors once.
Well, yeah, you could probably say that about a lot of the martial arts now, I would imagine. If it's
well, that's true.
So far off what the founder originated.
My lineage is in Mi Zongchuan, which is I mentioned earlier. My Qigong was a Lei Tai fighter back in the 20s, Lei Tai champion back in the 20s, and because of his success at fighting, not his success at skipping around with a sword, though he was amazing at that as well. Yeah. Because of his success at fighting, he was selected to be bodyguard for Zhang Shuliang. Zhang Shuliang was one of the main power brokers in China in the 20s and 30s and the 30s during the Chinese Civil War. In fact, he kidnapped Chiang Kai-shek and forced him to accept the help of the communists in the fight against the Japs. Right. So he was something like seen sort of a folk hero, of sort of symbolized Chinese unity really at a time when Chinese were smashing the granny out of each other rather than uniting against the invader. But I digress. But he was his bodyguard, and he'd earned that right by smashing other blokes to bits off raised platforms.
Yeah.
And that went, and the reason why that went, from my perspective, is the promotion of Chinese martial arts for health.
Yes.
Not for combat.
Yeah.
Number one. And that happened before the Chinese took over in 1949. But afterwards it got a lot worse. And it was a gradual suppression of the martial, because the martial was viewed with suspicion.
Yeah.
With the exception of those who were lucky enough to set up Sanda within the Chinese military. Right? And then by the time of the Cultural Revolution, from the 60s through to the 70s, 10 years, an entire decade, when the Gang of Four, that's Chairman Mao's wife and some other senior politicians in China and the Politburo there, waged a war on traditional Chinese culture. Mm-hmm. And after the dust had settled, loads of people stopped teaching. Those old masters were killed.
Yeah.
Several of the young Tai Chi masters, including Fu Zhongwen, who was young Cheng Fu's named successor, who was his nephew, he was locked in prison in solitary confinement because he was a martial artist.
Yeah.
And he's just an example. My Qigong was dragged through the streets of Shanghai with the thing on his head and a board with class enemy written on it, walking through. He was a normal working class guy who happened to be good at martial arts, mate.
Mm.
But he was abused, egged, mobbed by children, all whipped up into a frenzy of hate. This went on for 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, all the people that were studying beforehand, I mean, how many of them were still training? Really?
Yeah.
What would you or I do if the government was, you know, literally persecuting? If you got, what is your style, Dan?
Kind of a mix of things now, but some Aikido, some boxing, some jiu-jitsu, some little bit of MMA. Yeah, amalgamation.
Yeah, exactly. You learn all sorts of things, but he, if it was you, you couldn't train anymore because the government said, right, yeah, we've decided that's
exactly where we're at right now.
Yeah,
happening.
That's so true, isn't it? Yeah. But if it was punishable, practicing martial arts, we didn't have Zoom, we couldn't do stuff like this.
Yeah.
If this would get you and me locked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it was like.
Yeah.
And then after the dust had settled, after Mao died, the Chinese Communist Party decided they wanted to reinvigorate the whole affair.
Yeah.
So they brought teachers back to Chen village to teach the lineage holder.
Yeah.
They brought they created the entity that is training at the Shaolin Temple.
Yeah.
And Wudangshan. Yeah. They created modern wushu by trying to get as many of the old masters that were still around together to create this new performance art that would be their national art to showcase the athleticism and the martial virtues of the Chinese people.
Yeah.
But they reinvigorated it in a way that was not in step with the old, was very much in sync with the new their new vision for China.
Yeah.
My Shifu was asked to record his father's sword routines, etc., and he was reluctant to do it because he's like, hang on a minute, you're the same guys that were, you know, and now you want me to record it for you. What's in it for me?
Yeah, sure.
And I think it hasn't really moved on. It hasn't as much as Sandara's, as because, you know, which used to be purely for the military, has taken root. And that really, Sandara is really the hope for traditional Chinese martial arts. Yeah. And I would say the hope for Tai Chi Chuan. Because in common with Korean styles, we don't have any ground fighting.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Dog
so that is the Sandar. Yeah. Cool. Where can people get in touch with you then? So if they're interested,
get in touch with me on my website.
Yeah.
So you can get in touch with me through my Facebook page, which is Qing Liu. That's QINGLIU.
Thank you for spelling that. Yeah.
Or if you're interested, I teach kids classes. The kids classes are a sort of traditional MMA, I call it. Okay. So no trash talking or bad manners. Yeah. You get in touch with me there. I teach the little ones from age 4 upwards. And they learn basic kicks, punches, takedowns, throws, holds, locks, the lot. And then as they grow and they get bigger, we gradually introduce a bit of sparring. So that's that. We still teach all the traditional mise-en forms, and we still teach the Tai Chi ones. Got a separate Tai Chi page. It's Qing Liu Tai Chi Chuan. Yeah. And we have you find us on Facebook, or you can drop me an email at www. That's not
www.
It's info@qingliu.co.uk. Drop me and I'll be very pleased to take any queries.
Perfect.
And you know, I just sort of close, I suppose, by saying like, apologies if I've offended anyone. Okay, because
I think you're good.
A lot of time, but you need to burst your bubble.
Well, this is the thing, you know, there's a very fine line between speaking the truth and saying your point of view. And then I think part of the problem is that people think, oh, I'm not going to say this because I'll insult people, or I'll insult someone that's done this martial art for however long. And it's like, well,
my motivation for saying this is not that I want to promote my art and poo-poo everyone else's. Okay, my promotion for saying this, my motivation is that I believe all men are brothers. If someone's ripping you off, teaching you a load of stuff,
Yeah.
that a quick Google search, which will prove to you that is incorrect, then it's my obligation not to go, oh yeah, that's a valid point of view.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my view. Because
Sure.
I believe in being honest.
Yeah.
And I believe that's where all good martial arts flow from. Is
Yeah.
the technique honest? Am I honest?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think, yeah, be honest, be nice, stay in your lane, know what you're doing, and provide it to people. Yeah, awesome. Shifu Andy Denney, then, thank you so much. Awesome.
Yes, take
Hey,
care.
thank you.
Have a great one. Cheers, buddy.
Bye.
Bye.